Ms. Sheehan?
Here.
Ms. Venus Clemens?
Here.
Mr. Cirillo?
Okay.
We have a quorum of 9.
All right.
Sorry about that, everyone. Our apologies. We will.
Okay, I just want to make an announcement that we met in executive session. I'm sorry. We met in executive session to discuss real estate matters, and that lasted till a little bit after 7 o'clock. So now, we're going to change the order of our meeting, and so with that,
Mr. D'Angelo, before you do that, you do have to state, you do have to ask if there's any public comment, right, before you, and I believe, Karen, there was no one who signed up for public comment. Okay, so now it's clear there's no public comment, so now you may ask for the motion to change the order of business.
okay, so with no public comment, I would ask that someone motion to move our presentations to the end of our meeting and to move item 4, the consent agenda, to immediately now.
I will make a motion to shift the consent agenda to the current place on the agenda so that we can allow the people on the phone to, so I'll make the motion to amend the agenda.
Okay, the motion's by Mr. Jackson, can I get a second? Second by Ms. Oliver. And
Discussion.
with that, any questions or concerns about what we're doing? Take that as a no. All in favor? Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? That motion will carry. So,
Now, 4A.
looking at our agenda, item 4A, our first business is the appointment of some new board directors. And so tonight, we have Coach Sheldon Parr representing Ben Salem, who will be replacing Joe Pettyjohn. And Jim Hallowell from Palisades will be replacing Dawn Kucheliak. And are there any questions or concerns? Can I get a motion that we put those people on the board?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Oliver, second by Mr. Waldorf.
Discussion.
Any questions? I would just like to say thank.
Are you trying to approve them for tonight? Because it says that they're approved for July forward, so if you want it to be June, then we would have to, or I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if it was counting for tonight, if they
It does.
Yeah.
do
It does.
tonight, which is the July date, okay.
It does.
And I just want to thank Mr. Pettyjohn and Mr. Choliak for their, participation and being members on the board, and they served admirably, and they were great people to work with, and they always had the best interests of the IU in heart whenever they did. So I'd like to thank them for their service, and with that, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Point of order.
It says roll call vote, I apologize.
This is I'm sorry, roll call vote, please.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Venus Clemens?
Yes.
Ms. Eilenberg? Yes. Mr. Hollowell?
Can you vote?
No, he should not vote for himself.
No.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
We don't have a do we have a quorum of 7? I guess we do.
That's the open meeting.
It's okay on appointing new
That's true,
members,
yeah.
it's okay.
Mr. Cirillo?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
And Mr. Waldorf?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes with 7.
Okay,
Welcome aboard.
got that done. Welcome aboard. Anything to say, Coach?
If you did, just push that microphone.
Yeah.
No, I'm just glad to be here, and I did have a meeting with your executive director. Excited to excite everybody, it's less exciting, I'm only going to December. I'm filling out a position for the lead head of Rody Snyder. And we've been really busy this year with our board with that word taxes, but I'm happy to be here and learn a lot from you people.
Welcome aboard.
Mr. Hallowell?
I'm the same as Coach. I'll be here until December anyway. Whether I'll be here much longer than that, we'll find out in December. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
What about you?
Okay, now we can move on to our recommendation for action items and our consent agenda. So tonight we'll be reviewing items 6A through 11C. So I would ask anyone that has any questions or concerns regarding items 6A through 11C.
Anyone wants anything pulled?
Anybody would like anything pulled or to discuss or a question? Taken as a no.
And you still have opportunity for discussion after a motion and a
Yes.
second. Yep.
So with that, could I get a motion to approve items 6A through 11C on the consent agenda?
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Seidenberg, second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wardlaw. Okay? All in favor?
Discussion.
Any discussion? I'll take it as a no. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries.
Thank you all. Rebecca, are we okay?
Perfect.
So we appreciate the folks that called in to help us with a quorum tonight during a busy time of the year. Just for your information as board members on the phone, we did adjust the agenda, so all the voting items are now concluded, and we'll go into our traditional reports that typically occur. If any of you need to hang up, we won't be offended. Of course, you can call me and get the lowdown, knowing that some of you have stepped out of what you're doing to participate. So that concludes voting tonight.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to our presentations and mini reports. And the first one will be our special education mini report, past and early childhood programs.
As a reminder, in your orange folders, as well as on board docs, board members have a copy of this report. For our new board members, many times during your board meetings, you have an opportunity to report on the IU at your standing Ben Salem or Palisades board meeting, for example. Hopefully these folders give you items to use in your IU report.
Good evening, everyone. This one? No, it's not all.
Ghost in the wires today.
There we go now.
There you go.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Patty.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patty Quick. I am the Program Director for Preschool Early Intervention. I'm joined tonight with our Program Director, Rosanna Mitch. Dr. Rosanna Mitch is here joining us as well in support of our preschool and Head Start and our pre-K counts programs. So our special education mini report this month is a brief follow-up on PATHS, which is our supplemental curriculum that was purchased in spring of 2022 for use in our early childhood programs. As you will note in the mini report, our early childhood staff have been actively using these curriculum materials to support emotional regulation and emergent pro-social skills with our preschool students. The mini report gives you some insight as to the objectives of the lessons, how the lessons are delivered, and examples of the materials that are used with our students. Of particular interest in this mini report is the introduction of a character known as Tweedle the Turtle. Tweedle helps students learn alternatives to aggressive, outburst-based behaviors, and instead teaches them a series of cognitive linguistic ways to protest, to request help, to express their frustrations, and to resolve peer conflict. This curriculum aligns with the regulatory guidance that is provided to us from Head Start, from Pre-K Counts, and from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning. It's used throughout our countywide programs, particularly in our inclusive classrooms, with ongoing web-based staff training. So we just wanted to thank you for your support in the spring of purchase of this curriculum, and wanted to just take a moment to give you a brief update and let you see some pictures of it actively being used with our students. Does anyone have any questions that I could answer or anything that I can?
Have you seen changes in behavior in use of this?
One of the best parts of my job is seeing a child who is incredibly aggressive in the beginning of the school year start to actively do Twiggle, which if you don't know, Twiggle teaches you to stop, take a deep breath, and think before you act. And to see a child who goes from throwing themselves on the floor crying or perhaps punching, spitting, kicking, to
to actually stopping and taking a deep breath is one of the best parts of my job. So yes, we do see responsiveness to this. The kids actively in our classrooms know who Twiggle is. They talk about him by name. They encourage their peers, it's time for you to do Twiggle, or you forgot to do Twiggle. So it really is just it's heartwarming, for sure.
Yeah, I think, do you remember when we visited up at Lower South and we had the second, and we went into some of the classrooms, and I know this, I've seen this picture that you have, it was very similar to what we saw in person.
Yeah.
And just seeing it for the first time, it was pretty neat, and you could see that the kids were engaged. They were not just focused on themselves, they were as a group, they were, so having seen the first time, and I think with like 2 or 3 classrooms where they were using it, and it seemed to be really a powerful tool, and it seems to be working. So, if anybody on the board would like to see it, there's always a chance that we could go visit or set up a time for you to go to one of our sites. But it's a pretty impressive program. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. All right,
Thank you, Patty.
everyone, have a great night.
Okay, next on our list is Dr. Holler. And this would be the middle report on STEAM happenings in 2022-2023.
That's right, so in your folders, if you can find that report, over what I'm really thrilled to introduce you to or reintroduce you to, Dr. Lindsay Sides, our supervisor of STEAM education, and she's gonna give you a lot of exciting updates about all of our STEAM programs.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see familiar faces, and it's also nice to see new faces to our board. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to share with you some of the updates and some of the exciting growth in our STEAM programs over the past year. So I'll start just by touching on a few of the things that I'm going to go more in depth in. And that is talking about the professional learning that we've done as part of all of our STEAM programs, as part of our work from PDE, and also in response to the needs of all of your districts. I'll also talk about the growth of our, as I refer to them, our FAB programs, our global Fab Lab programs, and also our Fab Lab Center. I'll also highlight a couple of other just exciting growth moments over the course of the year, such as with our Chief Science Officer program and some of the field trips that we've done, the grants that we've received. It's been quite a year. So I'll start by talking about, never sure if it's the 10-second lag or if I really in fact didn't push the clicker. On that one I didn't push it. Maybe I still didn't push it. Maybe it's not working yet.
It wasn't working for Zoom.
Okay. Take it down.
There we go.
There we go. So I'll start with a couple of highlights of some of the professional learning that we've done this past year. And one of my favorite things that we've done this year, which is actually in support of what you see as the second bullet as well. The SEAL standards are our new science standards in the state that we are working towards adopting over the next couple of years. And watershed education is a part of that. So you see pictures on that slide of some of our teachers literally out in a stream. We have some wonderful partnerships here in Bucks County with informal outdoor education centers such as Heritage Conservancy. So we were at a heritage property back in the spring, literally out in the stream, working on just talking about how do we bring that kind of outdoor education and environmental literacy to kids. So we've done a lot of work this year in support of our SEAL standards implementation. That SEAL's acronym is, let me see if I can not look at the slide, focus on you. Science, technology, engineering, environmental literacy, and sustainability. Yes. We also spend a lot of our time working with teachers on general STEAM integration and best practices. So we bring our robots out a lot and talk about computer science principles. We get teachers really actively involved in anything related to the science and technology, really the STEAM integration.
Oh, it's working.
Yes.
Sorry.
We both did it, and it wasn't even 10 seconds. We also officially launched our STEAM Lending Library last fall, which is actually been kind of a few years in the works. This was a grant that we received several years ago to purchase the equipment. It took us a little while, thank you pandemic, to get the lending actually up and going. But the lending did kick off this year. So teachers can borrow equipment, and you can see some of the things listed on the slide. I won't read them all to you. But the gist of it is that teachers can borrow things for a 2-week lending period. When they sign something out through the online portal, they also complete a real brief training or professional learning, so they know how to not only keep the equipment safe, but also how to engage their kiddos with that equipment. For this coming year, our next steps are going to be to develop some model lessons to accompany all of that equipment. So we're looking forward to really our first full year of lending, and we've got lots of teachers already clamoring to get things out into classrooms in September. Our FAB programs have grown this year, and I'm very excited to share that with you. When I talk about FAB programs, I'm really talking about 3 different kinds of programs. First, our Fab Lab Center. Second, our what I'll say Mobile Fab Lab 1, which is the Mobile Fab Lab program focused on providing residencies to your school districts. And our newest addition, Mobile Fab Lab 2, which provides those same kind of 1-week residencies now to all of our non-public schools in the county. So you'll see by each of your laptops an invitation to a very exciting ribbon cutting ceremony that we're planning for September that is propped up on a cell phone holder that was actually made, the design of it, by a high school student on one of our engagement meetings that we did this past year. We asked the, I believe they were middle school students, to think of a common problem that they face in their life. And if you know a middle schooler or high schooler or even elementary child, you know that most things in their world revolve around their phone. So this particular student developed a design in our program to create something to prop up the phone so they could see it at all times, which I thought was a little extreme, but also tonight very handy for all of us. So you now have an engraved cell phone holder with our Fab Lab emblem holding onto your invitation to that ribbon cutting, celebrating our second mobile Fab Lab program. It's pretty good, Dr. Hoffman, right? Yeah.
And what's ingenious is, of course, it's portable.
Yes.
And then, of course, if you, the H for Hoffman, but more importantly, if you put it this way, the power cable fits, right? So you can charge your phone while it's in the prop. Like, I would have missed that part. I would have designed a straight across plate, and I would have failed the assignment. So that's why I'm not an engineer. Yeah.
We're a middle schooler worried about seeing their phone and having it fully charged at any given moment, right? So our Fab Lab Center offers out-of-school STEAM learning opportunities for kiddos, for families, for adults, for really anyone looking to engage in STEAM education. We've also become a pretty big field trip destination for schools. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And we provide a whole lot of professional learning for educators. And as I said, Mobile Fab Lab 1 is school district focused, Mobile Fab Lab 2 non-public school focused. So we had to pose our vans just so to capture all 3 programs really in one photo. For new board members, I thought that I would take a step back for just a quick few minutes and explain to you how we got there to that growth. We started our STEM or STEAM programs back in 2007. Probably even before then, but it started becoming a thing around 2007, 2011. We were doing a whole lot of professional learning when I first joined the IU. We then started dabbling in student events, our STEM Design Challenge, what was the computer fair, now media design competition. Every time we did one of those events, we were always asked, what else can you do? What's next? When can we do this again? And so in 14-15, we started a STEAM Saturdays program. We packed the IU Center here at 705 to the gills. That led us to partnering with a couple of school districts so that we could literally engage hundreds of kiddos on a Saturday morning. And the question was always, well, we want more. What else can we do? What else? Which made us a little nervous. but also led to really exciting growth as we tried to figure out what else we could do. Around that time, career readiness was also becoming a big interest, a big thing. And so connecting all of our STEAM programming with career readiness, with school, in-school learning became one of our major focuses. And so as we were doing all of our visioning work, doing all of the what else can we do work, we started readying ourselves for when funding became available to launch a mobile Fab Lab program, which we were able to do with our first program in 2019. That first mobile Fab Lab year, we were booked solid the entire year. It was very well received. We then started expanding into community engagement events. We visited libraries. We were out at school STEAM events. And the question kept coming, well, what else can we do? We want more. And so we took the leap and opened our Fab Lab Center in December of 2021, followed very quickly thereafter by lots of different programs that we started for kiddos. The Saturdays, in March of that year, we had our first field trip come to the center. We were back out in the summer times. We started our summer camp programs last summer, continuing this summer. And we are very excited that come fall of 23, we will have 2 mobile Fab Labs out for the entire year. We started in a few schools in the spring, but we'll officially launch at the start of this school year with our expansions. So you may be wondering, what is the mobile Fab Lab? It is literally a transit van that carries lots of different equipment out to schools. So on the left, you see a picture of one of the vans. On the right, you see the insides, which is like a giant game of Tetris to get it all in there. All of our equipment is carted and packed up to be very, very mobile and movable. The program works like this. We go out to schools for a 1-week visit or residency. We work with as many kiddos as we possibly can. One grade level is always selected as what we call the priority, which means we see them more than once. They engage more deeply in a design challenge or project. All other classes are exposed to either digital fabrication or computer science in typically one lesson, so a shorter exposure. And the titles are covering the last bullet, so I'm going to say I probably already mentioned that. This past year, we were thrilled to be in 31 different schools, which added up to over 10,000 kiddos across Bucks County that we engaged with our mobile Fab Lab program. 27 of those schools were school district schools, and then we added 4 non-public schools at the end of the school year. So we're really proud of those numbers. We anticipate much higher numbers this year, obviously, as we expand with our second program, but we anticipate another banner year with the mobile program. We are already fully booked on the school district side, and we are nearly fully booked on the non-public side as well. It usually only takes about 48 hours once we open registration to be packed for the year or filled up. Our center is a place where really anyone that wants to do STEAM stuff can go. We do a lot of work engaging kids. We do a lot of work engaging schools and educators. But really, we're a place for all STEAM stakeholders to come together. And we're proud to be that space in Bucks County. So our statistics at the center this year, over 600 educators came through engaged in professional learning at the center. We engaged over 2,000 kiddos between just our after-school clubs and our Saturday programs. And 20 different field trips added up to over 1,000 kiddos just through field trips alone. And we already have our fall clubs advertised for this coming year, and we anticipate even better numbers. Our summer camp update, I want to say we are knee-deep. We are more like neck-deep in summer camp right now. We've got 10 weeks of camp this year on a range of different topics. We've got a couple of sampler weeks where we kind of do a little bit of everything, engineering, some computer science, some digital fabrication, and then we've got more specific themed weeks. This week we're doing a really neat video production camp, which is super cool. We've got another camp going where they're literally making boardwalk or carnival games out of all kinds of cardboard, and then adding circuitry to make them go and do things. Over the course of those 10 camps, we've got over 350 kiddos registered. And just for comparison, last summer in our first year of summer camp, we were able to offer 5 weeks of camp, less than 100 campers. So while we've doubled our weeks of camp, we've almost quadrupled our engagement with kids, which we are really excited about. So we are neck deep in summer camp. If you're looking for any of the STEAM team this summer, we are summer camp engaged. So our fall lineup, we'll have our clubs, we'll have our Saturdays, we'll have field trips. We're trying out several different kinds of programs this year. We're gonna have a tiny house challenge on a Saturday. We will offer another charcuterie event that we offered for the first time this past spring. It was a big success for us. And we'll continue doing team building programs and adult classes as the year goes on. Just some other brief highlights from the year. Our STEM endorsement program, which is a collaboration with Delaware Valley University, continues to run strong every year. This year we finished with about 8 teachers in the program that earned their STEM endorsement from the Department of Education. We hosted 2 days of amazing STEM Design Challenge competition. We continue to be the largest STEM Design Challenge in the state. Probably in the spring, at a previous mini report, we saw pictures of kids with their giant Connect structures. We, as you can see in the picture, fabricate all of their little trophies and awards at the Fab Lab for them. We also hosted several nights for our own IU programs. Many community or family engagement nights lend themselves perfectly to the Fab Lab. So we're proud to partner with our own family, so to speak, to do that. We also were the recipient of a number of grants, such as the picture that you see from Foundation's Community Partnership, that allow us to offer scholarships for all of our Fab Lab Center programs, whether it's after school clubs or the Saturdays or summer camp. We're really proud to be able to offer scholarships. The photo that you see in the bottom right corner, those are our chief science officers, which are high school and middle school aged kids from across the county, Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County. They come together to bring more STEM into their schools. And so it's kind of a version of an honor society, but for science and STEM in particular, which is a really neat program that will go statewide this year. So we're very excited to be part of that. Are we up for a brief activity, Dr. Hoffman? What do you think?
Well, of course, you can't ask me that and say no, right? Yeah.
I want to misread the room.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
We'll do it very quickly.
Yeah.
So I thought I would introduce to you one of our robots that we use really with all ages of kids, but especially with our younger kids. And the reason that we use this particular robot is that it's deviceless. So meet Indy. Indy runs off of color codes. So you're each going to get your own little Indy car. The on button is at the back of him. And you may be wondering how he actually goes. Dan took our slide down for a second, so you can't see it anymore. So I'll show you. You're also going to get a blue little box here. And the blue box has a bunch of little rubber cards. The rubber cards hold meaning. I'm going to ask each of you to just give it a try by simply taking one color tile, putting it next to another color tile. No need to repeat your color tiles next to each other as you're figuring this out. But let's see what each of those color tiles does. So you'll want to give yourself just a little space and then set Indy go. If Indy happens to accidentally fall off your very narrow table, don't panic, it's okay. They are kid friendly, they will bounce back. So set some of your color tiles up. And let's see if we can figure out just a couple of the different color codes. And I would be willing to bet that the red and the green are super easy for you to imagine what they are, because you may be able to make other connections to your adult life. What does a red color mean? And what does a green color mean? So that's the only hint I'm going to give, and then I'll give you a minute to think. And if you'd like to just simply experiment with your neighbor, you can do that too.
Liz, do we push the power button?
You sure can. When you're ready, Dr. Hackman, give him a go.
Look at that. Liz, can you help us guys?
Are you supposed to do something?
All right, let's see. Just hit the power button on the back. Oh, there it goes.
It recognizes. After you green.
What does it do? I just did a lot. Good.
Without going using. Oh, that's what we want to do. It's going to go really fast.
Turn it off. Let's see.
I don't think this is working.
It's broken. All right, let's see what happens.
Put it on green. It has to start over.
Orange is right.
Take it out.
Lay these cards, we know that thing. We're human around. So let's see if we keep it.
I got it.
Very good. Oh, look at that. So you can see experiment. Who does, or the red. So green means no, so you can put experiment.
I will always ready for you.
I wouldn't have said that.
They gave him the Evel Knievel Snake River.
Nicely done. Well done.
Snake River, what are you trying to do? Jump the Snake River Canyon or?
You got it, man.
So what you're doing right now is on your own through exploring, developing the basics of block coding. All computer science is giving directions. Your color codes are giving your indie robot a set of directions. And so you can create that set of directions in any sequence that you want, which is the same logic that holds true all the way through computer science learning. And so at a young age, we're starting to teach kids the basics of what it means to code and what it means to give a computer a set of directions. And once they understand that, they transfer that basic understanding pretty easily to an iPad or a laptop to do more coding. I hope you had fun.
Nicely done.
And that'll be the end of our presentation,
Well
unless
done,
anyone
Liz.
has questions.
I had questions. I was just curious, are you able to touch every district? Okay.
Yeah, Lindsay, you want to talk about that with the, you talk about the mobile file app, of course?
Yeah, the mobile file app, and I was just curious the number of public school students versus non-public school students in regard to the resource.
Sure. So Lindsay, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so our school district focused numbers this year were about 9,700. The non-public numbers, it was 4 schools at the end of the year. So we were about 400, 500 kids there. The school district numbers were much larger.
I'm just asking if we're gonna have we're gonna have a file app 3 eventually, right?
Yeah.
So right now we have one dedicated to all the public schools and one dedicated to all the non-public schools. So I'm just curious in terms of the ratio.
Yeah, so
That's
that
gonna sort of,
essentially that is the ratio just based on funding streams. We would love to grow to the capacity to be able to provide a residency to every elementary school in the county. Maybe in 5 years we'll be back with that. I hope that's.
I was also curious about with all the camps and the Saturdays and the scheme design and the training, are we able to touch again all of the districts, or again, there's a predominance in certain areas of the county or maybe certain laws or not?
I can say from, let me start with Fab Lab Center perspective and those programs. They are open to any family across the county. We also have a lot of out of county families. We're kind of at that sweet spot of being able to reach Montgomery County kiddos as word spreads about our programs. I'm always amazed that for a 5 o'clock after school club, we have devoted families coming up from Bristol Borough. We have devoted families coming all the way down from Palisades. How they logistically make it by 5 o'clock club, I'm not sure I can do it. But yes, I do see families from all 13 of our districts coming to the center. In terms of mobile Fab Lab programming, depending on the school year and just how we get scheduled, we don't typically get to all 13, but there are years that we get real close. But it's, again, in a typical year, we're able to get to about, depending on how holidays fall, 28, 29 residencies. There are elementary school-wise 85. So we do our best to get to every district, but it typically isn't possible.
Okay, so then if you get to 23, you get 1 year and then another 23 get it, another 23 get it, or is basically the first come, first served?
We have started doing that for the coming year, yes, to make sure that we, I do kind of like in advance, like, hey, I know that you weren't able to get to you last year. We go to them first. Yeah. So you'll see probably when I come back next July, I can share with you the different districts and schools that we've been to this year. Mr. Jackson?
You know, I was president when the Fab Lab opened, so it was very exciting, and I know that there was a long list of, we could probably do this. And, you know, kudos to you and your team, and Dr. Hoffman. I'm amazed at what you've done in a short amount of time, but I'm just curious, one of the things that we were suggesting, well, maybe we could do this. I just wanted to know if you've had any success or interest in this. Private parties, in other words, you know, Jimmy's birthday party, let's go to the Fab Lab or anything like that. I didn't hear any of that, and I wasn't sure if that was tried and just didn't work, or.
So it's always a big go, no-go conversation, shall we say. One of our former PNS members used that term frequently. As we have grown our Saturday programs, we typically now, many months, are doing a morning Saturday and an afternoon. So from a staffing perspective and a facility perspective, we're pretty booked up. We have had a couple, we've had more than a couple requests for birthday parties. We're not able to satisfy many of them. And it's also that difficult conversation of where can we do more good, so to speak, and also capacity-wise be able to do it. So we have said yes to, this past year we did, just in the spring, one birthday party. And it was a devoted kid that had been to the Fab Lab many, many times, and we were able to pull that one off. But that is something that we kind of keep on the down low, just because capacity-wise, we're not able to do a whole lot.
No, I'd rather you use the resources for, you know, the educational purposes. Not that that wouldn't be educational, but
yeah,
I think that's better. I was just curious. So.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Where can we be more educational? And also, where can we engage the most kids and generate the most excitement that makes those connections to career, to school, and so on. That's where we see our bigger impact. Any other questions?
I just want to thank you. I'm kind of amazed that your one PowerPoint, it had the timeline. And I think that's really a powerful thing. So it started off as we got a grant from PICO and we got a Fab Lab, right? And then we went to the schools and, you know, you guys did a lot of work to generate interest. And then we moved on and we started getting more interest, and we have the actual Fab Lab itself, right, at the new facility. And like I can tell you in Bristol Borough, like you mentioned, and I was up there twice. One of them was for one of your Saturday programs. And I was just amazed that the cross section of kids, so it's not like all, you know, it's boys and girls and third graders and fifth graders. And, you know, I remember you were like asking me to say, and I'm looking around, and these kids were focused on what they were doing. I mean, their intensity is involved in the experiment. So, then of course now I see we're gonna have another one. But what I will say to you and to Mr. Jackson is that, at Snyder Girardi, we literally have our own kind of satellite Fab Lab, right? And when I went up to our IU Fab Lab, and busload from Bristol comes in, and it was great. It was kids with their parents. And I can tell you 3 or 4 days later, at our next meeting, some of the parents came and said, wow, it was really great. Our kids are really, and so you built it really, you know, the old thing is if you build it, they will come, right? And that doesn't always work. But if you look at that timeline, you've just done an amazing job and just kind of kept expanding the reach. And to what Mr. Jackson says, yeah, like birthday parties and renting the hall out, that's when you've got nothing else to do, you know what I mean? That's when you, but you guys have built it out, and I know, like one of the things that when I went there for Bristol, your Fab Lab people were on the phone with Mr. Clausen, and our kids had made something, and your guys were saying, wow, just do that, you know? So, it's just an incredible, it's a program now, and it's serving thousands of kids, and I don't see it getting any smaller. But I just want to thank you because it's, you know, we look where we're at now and it looks like, yeah, that was easy, right? But it wasn't. And I know I've seen every step of the way, all the work that everyone has done to make it what it is. And so I would hope that possibly that districts would follow our example and maybe some of the elementary schools to embed their own Fab Lab. Now, one of the other things that I know that a lot of this stuff like the 3D printers, they cost a lot of money. They're expensive equipment, and even the supplies. So I will tell you that we met with Mr. Clausen, and our district has said, look, you know, we know this needs a little more, and so we kind of allocated $10,000 for him just to start, to see what supplies you need, the materials you need. And he was excited about that, and our board didn't bat an eye. So because of what happened here down at Snyder Girardi, there's like a satellite version of the Fab Lab. So I hope that maybe other schools will follow suit. It doesn't really cost a lot of money, and I can tell you that the demand is there. You've proven it. So thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Anybody else? Okay. All right. Dr. Hoffman, it looks like it's time for your good news report.
I believe we have M2C Technology Services.
I'm sorry, did I miss one? Yes, right there, I'm sorry, did you?
So how's the technology doing?
Well, interesting enough, right? First thing I want to say is I don't want to follow Lindsay anymore. Every year she's got gifts, she's got you guys interactive, and I come here and some formal requests about not following Lindsay next year. I do want to talk about plan, build, run methodology. It's what I've introduced here at the IU. And I do want to apologize for the audio video issues. I do want to highlight, however, plan, build, run. It kind of speaks for itself. You plan things, you build things, you run things. Our teams are not big. We don't have people sitting in a room planning and engineering and drawing out. We don't have another team sitting around saying, we're going to run, we're going to implement, and we're going to design, and we're going to tear it back, and we're going to test it, and then we're going to have this team that watches it, right? Our team, just similar to your teams, are pretty small. So the plan, build, run kind of comes into one big group. And the audio video system, it was 2 months ago, we were asked to put something together in no time at all. And that's kind of the run aspect of what we do. And I do want to say, since I've been at the IU, we are a services agency, and the run, we knock it out of the park. Right? We get things going up and fast, and ironically, more time you spend planning, building. Sometimes you re-engineer, and it doesn't always work out, right? So I just do want to comment again, apologize for the difficulties we had there, but highlight that we are a run organization, and as a service agency, you know, we battle through and get things running. With that being said, my 2 pages here, I just want to highlight a couple of the projects that we built. So when I say plan, build, run, build is what we do last year. A couple highlights: wireless infrastructure refreshed, It's not just controllers on site in the cloud, it's all these things in the ceilings. Technology teams work on weekends at night, right, to make sure that all that gets refreshed, all that stays available, and it was a pretty big highlight. The number of controllers was in the hundreds. We replaced our backup disaster recovery infrastructure with a focus on data security. Multi-factor authentication was a huge requirement from cyber 2 years ago. Most of your districts in the IU, we implemented it together, and this past year we've actually enhanced our MFA. So it's not just a simple yes, no, it takes in region, it takes in actual response that's intelligent. We also added IT service management platform. So service management being a ticketing system. Normally you open a ticket, it goes into a queue. We've actually built intelligence into the service management platform. You'll see a picture of tiles there. What those are is the customer comes in, selects that tile. It's going to the right person with the right priority, with the right SLA, which is the service level. But basically, it's our response to say, this type of ticket, we're gonna get back to you in 2 days. This type of ticket, we're gonna get back to you in 7 days. We continue to evolve that, and we look forward to really, it's kind of in my plans as well. So it's a tool that continues to evolve, and working closely with tech directors, they're excited to see what we're doing in that regard as far as the ticket comes in, how you handle it, how you escalate it. The run is what I call keep the lights on, KTLO. Run is basically what we do. There's incidents, there's outages. A couple highlights there. One that's very specific to all the districts is our RWAN. If you don't know, we manage the county RWAN. All of your districts, CTCs, entities are on that. We introduced Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they run these metrics called nines, 4 nines, 5 nines, 6 nines. That's essentially your uptime across the year. I'm happy to say last year we reported 4 nines, 99.99% uptime, which equated to less than 60 minutes of downtime on the county RWAN. This year we had one outage impacted in Chamonix. It was a truck ran into an overpass, broke the fiber, it was down 36 hours. All right, that was the one outage we had. So essentially 18 other sites were up 100% of the time. So no outages there. Can't even quantify with nines because 5 nines is stellar. Like I said, 100% at 18 of 19 entities. We're currently in the middle of a laptop refresh. Essentially the team is replacing 1,300 devices for people in the field, people in the offices. We've had multiple remote days. Half the team was in Upper County. Today, literally replacing devices. Teachers walk in, a process that used to take 2 to 3 hours is taking about 15 to 20 minutes. So good feedback there. We're probably about 60% through. We're looking to be done in August before the next school year. External services, so multiple districts there, multiple entities we've helped this past year, such services, storage migration, server upgrades, IT leadership and staff development, professional development, a lot of security conversations, a lot of conversations on their RWAN. And then overall technology service tickets, 4,000 plus tickets managed by the small team here at the IU. So with that, plan, build, run, not to confuse, I talked about build and run last year, and I want to talk about plans for the next 12 months. A few highlights, the technology service platform, as I mentioned, we continue to evolve that. What I'm looking for in the next 12 months is actually have dashboards and actually have our supervisors and our leaders in the organization be able to look real time, where are their tickets sitting? What is their staff doing? What are they opening? What are we resolving for them? A new business process workflow system. So certain processes that maybe didn't exist or maybe existed on paper, we're turning into more of electronic online system with approvals, with signatures, with multiple back and forth fact checks, so on and so forth. One other, we're very excited this year. We're planning a county-wide cyber tabletop exercise. So all districts and all CTCs involved. You hear cybersecurity, people think. Some people get scared, and sometimes that is a point of this. This is not, the point of this is about awareness. It's about real life scenarios, putting your districts and your leaders in a position to kind of honestly assess, where would we be in a real life scenario where a cyber incident hit us? Some of it's like I said, it's about preparedness, it's about response, it's about honesty, and it's really explicit feedback. Work together, district-wide, county-wide, to come here at the IU and run through a tabletop with leadership and say, we've got self-assessment, honest. We're good at this, we're not good at this. How do we communicate? What do we need to work on, and what do we lead with? Any questions?
You mentioned you're in the middle of a laptop refresh. Is this like a one-time thing? The only reason I ask is, in Quaker Town, we provide laptops to all students. And the way we do that is we do it through a cycle, like a 5-year cycle or whatever. Sounds like you're doing it in a 1-year boom done.
No, so essentially the 4 or 5 year cycle for the laptops right now are for staff, for teachers. Next year will be a student device refresh, again, a 4 or 5 year cycle, depending on if they're the lower kiddos and iPads or the higher age, older kiddos with laptops. But they're on 4 or 5 year cycles depending on hardware.
So it's just instead of everybody on a cycle, it's programs on a cycle.
Well, it's more, so basically all staff, whether you're at 705 or whether you're in your classroom, you're getting a new laptop in the next 4 to 6 months.
Every next year with students, rather than doing students and teachers at the same time, students. Yeah. Thanks, Susie.
Anyone else? I just, first of all, I apologize for missing your report, but I just gotta tell you, just the laptop refresh, think about it, and people take it for granted. 10 years ago, it was a guy coming to your desk and loading software on. Then it evolved into automatically, like being able to load the software on. Someone had to babysit it, then you could do it without it. So just that alone is it's just a gargantuan job and task. And so I just have to say to you and Dan and the team that you've built to do this. When you involve in IT, so when he was here, I'm seeing him now, and compared to the things that he had to do, to what you've done now, and the cycle, the way things are changing, we are the leader, you know what I mean? And many of the districts rely on us, and remember every district, I know in Bristol we have 1,200 pads. I imagine in Bethsaida or Pennsbury they have 10,000 laptops or pads. And so as we devise and develop the best ways, like you say, to plan them out, that's helping all of our districts. So what happened here tonight means nothing to me. What means something to me is that within the course of 1 month, we went from having our meetings to streaming our meetings. And you did that pretty flawlessly. So again, I just want to thank you. You've done such a great job and building a team, and I think that's probably the most important thing. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. It's amazing.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to see you try doing a laptop refresh in your day.
You can do it.
I think the challenge has been laid. I think I have the artifacts to prove that I might have been the first tech director to even attempt that, but yeah. They were Apple computers, it was even that much more difficult because they weren't enterprise managed. Is it my turn, Mr. D'Angelo?
It's your turn now, yeah.
I'll be brief. Your orange folders contain the mini reports that we referenced before, and of course to save the dates. I don't want to, there's no way I can compete with the 3 reports that you saw tonight. And so I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things that are in your orange folder, namely the awesome news. I just want you to see that in this awesome news, again, for new board members in particular, and for our returning board members, a reminder that the awesome news that you see here is literally things that have happened since the last board meeting. Right? So pages and pages of amazing things that this intermediate unit team continues to provide it, not only to our own internal families and students and employees, but also your students and families and educators. Page 1, you see some information about the Fab Lab. Of course, Lindsay talked about that. Thank you, Dr. Sines. This great photo from Lower South, actually sons of IU employees in Boy Scout Pack 133, shout out to them for raising the flag at Lower South and doing it the right way as part of, I assume, a badge effort. And I remember, Pete, you sent me those pictures. It was really cool to see. And shout out to our IU staff members whose sons that are part of this Boy Scout Pack. Just a great job. Of course, there's some great information about the no limitations mindset of our IU deaf and hard of hearing programs, K-5 programs. On page 2, you see lots of Monday Moments. Monday Moments is a relatively new Monday occurrence at the IU where we highlight our staff. I encourage all board members, anybody who's watching this on YouTube, to like the intermediate unit on Facebook, Twitter, social media. where you'll see not only all of these posts, but in particular on Monday, you'll get to see the great folks that work for the Center Media Unit. You just talked to Cece about team, we talked to Dr. Sides about team, we talked to Patty and her report about team, these folks that represent all of you as proud ambassadors of the IU. Monday Moments is just one way that we highlight our team. This organization is nothing without our team. You mentioned the visitors from the Department of Ed. You'll see them on the top of the next page, the 2 Deputy Secretaries of Education that particularly came to Bucks County and spent a day with us and visited Lower South, got to read, they went to the Fab Lab, they met with some folks from districts. Again, Learn, Flourish, Contribute, the keywords from our current comprehensive plan and the t-shirts that our staff proudly wear. The IU's helping Council Rock with the Human Resources Director position, and we're proud to help Pembroke School District in the search for a new superintendent. Of course, you've seen information from me, indicating that we're providing those services. And we're always proud to do that. I think we've helped all of your districts with some executive search at some point, many of you multiple times. Project Sequel, an amazing program. There's some of our amazing clients, if you will. Bowling, hiring events. We're very aggressive, active, proactive in recruiting staff to work and be a part of our team. Mr. D, back to that point. Some great things about art. And IU students at Pedia Med are creating something along with the book Abuela. Professional development for our ESY staff. What's ESY? That's our extended school year program, providing support for our amazing students in the month of July and all the work that goes into planning that and making it happen. So kudos to that ESY team, which is really the whole IU team. There's a core group of people that make that happen, but again, they're supported by everybody. And so just a shout out to them for the work that they're literally in the middle of. That is the amazing education we offer across Bucks County in the month of July. Social media campaign for Dr. Holler mentioned Career Ready Bucks, so Dr. Sides has mentioned it as well today. Look for that online social media. Mad Science for Little Ones, some great science experiments, and our Head Start programs, as well as the STEM endorsement that Dr. Sides mentioned. How do you follow the IU? On the back, you see our @BucksIU22 handle across all the social media sites. In your packets as well, and available via email and on our website for anybody that's watching. The great STEAM and STEM endorsements that we have in partnership with local universities and through the intermediate unit, as well as a special education program for emerging special education leaders that we have at Del Val. And then a notice I learned today, I shared this with superintendents today, I shared it with the board. The State Board of Education is they have multiple meetings, but at least 3 of the meetings that I'm aware of. One is in Harrisburg, one is on the western side of the state at the Allegheny IU, and one is on the eastern side of the state. They picked the Montgomery County IU, our neighbors next door. That is a meeting open to the public. I don't believe I've ever attended a State Board of Education public meeting, and the Department of Ed asked if I could help promote that. So you are all officially invited to attend as members of the public, but of course in your role representing your district as a member of the public. Mr. D'Angelo, with that concludes my brief Executive Director's report tonight.
Yeah, and if I could just briefly add one thing that if any of you board members are on Facebook, I think Robin does a great job along with Karen's team. All of the districts are looking for employees, and Karen and puts out through Robin on Facebook almost every day. We're looking for this type, that type. So if you can, and if you see it, please forward it, please share it. Because again, every district is struggling, and I know that. How are things going? Are we getting good responses from this, or?
We are. We're seeing a lot more candidates apply, which has been great. Today, our team was out at ESY and we signed up 25 people to start in the fall. So we are seeing a lot more activity, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's a time of change, and there are a lot of people that are looking, teachers, aides, whatever, drivers, and they're looking to maybe they're unhappy or they just want to find something better, and there is no better place than the IU. So I would just encourage every other board member, if you get on Facebook and you go to, all you gotta do is go to the IU link, and then you'll get these things. And I get them every day, and I love it. I forward it, and then I look to see who's looking at it. So there's metrics all around, and I know Robin, the minute I get it, I'll see Robin, yeah, you were the first person who liked it. Yeah. Well, my point is, that's how Facebook works, and it really gets around. It's a very efficient way and I think that you're seeing dividends, so again, great job by you and your team, and I would just ask all the rest of the board if you could do your part and forward stuff along. Okay. So now we're gonna pick up where we left off was, we're gonna go to all the way down here, is this? 12A, and that would be legislative report, and that would be Rebecca. And this should be interesting. Find out what's going on in Harrisburg.
So I don't have any robotic cars either, I'm sorry, but I will give you a little bit of update of all the exciting activity that has occurred in Harrisburg, maybe activity that hasn't occurred in Harrisburg. For you new board members, your legislative report that I try to provide to you every month is in your orange folder. It looks something like this, without my highlights. And let me just give you a very brief overview. I'm looking at the time, but newsflash, as of today's date, Pennsylvania still does not yet have an enacted budget for the 23-24 fiscal year. The House and Senate have both approved House Bill 611, which is actually the appropriations bill for the budget. So they both approved the same bill, but we still don't have a budget. So why is that? We don't have a budget because Governor Shapiro apparently made a promise that he would line item veto school vouchers from House Bill 611. And he made that promise, he said, so that bill would be approved by the House. And in reliance on that promise, the House approved by a party line vote, House Bill 611. And once that was done, in a nutshell, and I took 3 pages to write it, but I'll just fast forward. Once that was done, the Republicans in the Senate said, whoa, we had a deal. We had a deal with you, Governor, where we gave you the spending plan you wanted, which is about a $45.5 billion ask, in exchange for you giving us the voucher program under the PASS, Pennsylvania Students Succeed Act. And in exchange for that, we pretty much gave you the spend amount that you wanted in your budget. Even though the Senate had approved House Bill 611, the measure went to the House. After the Senate approved it, the House was asked to concur in the Senate amendments. The House was going to refuse to do that when Governor Shapiro said, I promise you I'll line item the PASS program, the school voucher part of that bill. And when he made that promise, the House then passed the bill. And the Senate refused to sign it. So the president pro tem of the Senate is Kim Ward, and it's usually very routine. Before the bills go to the governor to be signed, both chambers sign off on it. They don't even have to be in session. It's generally just the president of the Senate signing off on the bill. The Senate Republicans were so upset by what happened, they decided they weren't going to sign the bill. And the president said, I refuse to sign it. And they went out, they adjourned for the session, and they're not coming back until September. So that's what happened in a nutshell, but I took 3 pages to tell you about it, because you know I'm a lawyer, so it takes me a long time to tell you everything. Right now, both chambers have adjourned. Right now, the Senate adjourned until September 18th. And the House is adjourned until September 26th. I understand that things are really, really tense in Harrisburg, and we can see it. I mean, you can talk to our Bucks County delegation, and our Bucks County delegation tells you it's the worst they've ever seen it. And that's what they share. And so I think that everyone, all the parties involved, the House Democrats, the House Republicans, the Senate Democrats, the Senate Republicans, and the governor all decided, let's take a pause, let's take time to just cool off a little bit, and we're gonna come back together again and figure out what we're gonna do. So there's some talk that maybe one of the chambers would come back in mid-August, but that certainly is not on any announced schedule. Right now, no one is coming back until September 18th for the Senate, September 26th for the House. Let me just state that it doesn't matter whether House Bill 611 was signed by the Senate and made it to the governor, because neither chamber passed any of the school code bills. And in order to actually have a budget enacted, you have to have the appropriation bill, House Bill 611, and then you need the authorizing bills that actually tell you how to spend that money. Those are generally the fiscal code bill, the omnibus school code bill, and usually all of it is done hand in hand. And you know, each July we're here, we're talking about what's in that final passed budget, and it's a variety of appropriating legislation and then authorizing legislation. Over on page 4, I gave you a little bit of background on what's going on over on page, and I also gave you some background on the difference between an appropriation measure and an authorization measure. So even if the Senate signed that bill and sent it to the governor, we still wouldn't really have a budget. All we have is an appropriation. None of the agencies can spend the money until they have the authorizing bill. So that's the power that is still remaining out there. How are we going to get those authorizing bills, those omnibus bills, the fiscal code bill approved? So instructions are given on how to spend that money. Okay, so that's that, and I'm happy to take any questions. On page 5, I gave you the session schedule for the fall. You can tell neither chamber is really in for very many days in the fall. At the bottom of page 5, one of the good news is the House, before they left town on July 7th, by a vote of 122 to 81, passed House Bill 1422, which is the Cyber Charter Reform Bill. That is the bill that all of us for years have been asking the legislature to take action on to even the playing field between cyber charter schools and public schools. So one of the things this bill did was to set a standard statewide cyber charter tuition rate of $8,000 for non-special education students. And then for special education students, this bill implements the same tiered special education funding formula that's used by the public schools. And depending on the level of need of the student, there's 3 tiers and ranges for the amount that the school can collect for services for special education would range anywhere from $13,000 to $50,000 based upon the level of need of the service. Some of the other things that the bill does, it requires accountability. It sets fund balance standards for cyber charter schools that cannot exceed 8%, very similar to what's in place for public schools. It requires wellness checks for each student, so the cyber charter has to verify that students are actually logging in, attendance is being taken, and they can see the students on screen. If they see that there's any reason for concern, it puts the same mandated reporting standards on cyber charter employees as are on other public school employees. It requires cyber charter school board meetings to follow the Sunshine Act. It requires the school trustees and the administrators to live by the same financial, ethical, and right to know standards that public schools follow. And then it also sets up a very clear, uniform, and standard process for applications to create a cyber charter school. So this legislation was passed by the House. It typically would be sent to the Senate. The Senate typically would refer it to the the Senate Education Committee. However, because the Senate's not in session, they're not accepting any legislation. So it's just languishing until the Senate reconvenes, and then hopefully it will be sent to the Senate. Finally, over on page 6, I gave you some good news. There was a bill introduced in Congress, in both the House and the Senate at the federal level, United States Congress, It is called the IDEA Full Funding Act. This legislation would finally ensure that the federal government fulfills its commitment to fully fund the Individuals with Disabilities Act at the standard that they promised when it was first approved in 1975. In 1975, when IDEA was first approved, Congress committed to pay 40% of the average per pupil expenditure for special education. The federal government has never, ever funded school districts at that level. It has never been met. Current funding is calculated to be less than 13% of that amount due. So this bill sets up graduated standards for the federal government to fully fund IDEA. Each year it gets higher and higher gradually over time. I think over a 10-year period, we get to that 40% standard. Our members of the Senate, Senator Casey signed on as a co-sponsor of the bill, and Representative Fitzpatrick signed on as a co-sponsor of the House measure as well. So you get a chance, you can thank those the senator and representatives for doing that. That's essentially all I have. Does anyone have any questions? I know it was kind of a hectic month. Yes,
Yeah,
Mr. Jackson.
Question about the IDEA, because that's near and dear to everybody's heart here. I don't know that you can answer this question, but your gut feeling, my concern is that it's being introduced now. It's going to go through committee and whatnot. And there's an election next year that could flip everything. So you got 60 co-sponsors in one house, and 20 in the other. That's a good number of co-sponsors. But do you really believe it'll get to a president who would sign it?
So you're asking me to speculate.
Yes.
And I can only answer that this bill has been introduced several times and it's never made it across the finish line, so to speak. Also, I believe the House Appropriations Committee either today or yesterday gutted like 39% of federal funding for Title I. So I'm not, I don't know if the interest is there to get this bill across the finish line. But it's still something that, especially those of us who work in special education, it's still something that we really need to be advocating for because it is very, very much needed. When I think of your own school district's budgets and typically how much your taxpayers pay for special education because the federal government has not met their commitment for funding IDEA at the 40% level, think if you had that money coming in, what you could do, what that would free up in your own budgets. So, any other questions?
Yeah, so that's a good point, Ron, but my point is basically for everyone to know now, the federal government passed IDA that we have to comply with, and they said they were gonna fund 40%, but they're basically funding 13%, so they shorted this like 3 times, basically. So that's something that, again, big school districts, small districts, it's a huge component, and we complied, and we also had to pick up 2/3 of the cost of compliance. The other thing is the cyber, which I know, so you're saying that is out there, but that could fall by the wayside. I know our business manager was excited because he pretty much knocked it in simple terms. It's $4,000 a student, basically, right? So if you have a non-special ed student attending charter school, this would have capped it, and every district would have saved $4,000 a student. Now, for Bristol, it's maybe less than 20.
Well, it's more, your savings, for a non-special ed student, you're capped at $8,000. That is what the standard statewide tuition rate is under this bill.
Right, but I mean, now it's 12.
Right now, it is whatever it costs your district to serve that student, so it's different for every district.
I mean, kind of at a minimum.
In Bristol Borough, if your per pupil cost is $12,000, Some of our districts, I know the per pupil cost is 30,000.
Yeah,
So it depends on the district, and that is part of the inequity in the charter school law, because it really isn't based on what it costs to serve the student. It's based on what it costs to serve the student in your district, right? And so you're paying for your building costs, you're paying for your facilities costs, you're paying for all the extras that you pay for that you don't get with cyber charter because it's a online, online instruction.
you know, I'm just saying it's a big, you would hope that if that gets passed, that would provide a lot of relief. It's not the total answer, but that's a step in the right direction.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed about the state budget, and I think that goes into the next information item. Dr. Hoffman, if you or Allison wants to talk about that.
I defer to Mr. D, are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rebecca talked about the state budget and the impasse and the impact on money flowing to school districts. So I sent you a note, I think it was last week, from the state, just to inform you. Allison, you want to give a sense of what this information item says and what the board should be prepared for as early as next month?
Sure. So without having a budget, we will not be receiving any funds from the state. So we currently have a budget of about $212 million for the 23-24 school year, and of that, close to $100 million will come through the state for state and federal funding. So we are carefully monitoring our cash flow, looking at what cash we have on hand and what other revenues we expect to receive in the next couple of months. We think we have enough cash for the next few months to be okay and pay our bills. But if the budget impasse were to go past that, we would be in need of cash. So we are carefully looking at our cash flow and doing the analysis of how long we think our cash will last. If we don't see any progress on the budget approval in the next month, then to the August board, we will likely bring a motion that will allow us to work with PFM, who is a financial advisor, and they will help us go out for a RAN if needed. A RAN is a revenue anticipation note, essentially a vehicle to borrow money while we wait for money from the state. This is similar to what your districts would do. They would go out for a TRAN, which is a tax revenue anticipation note. And that would help us in the event of a prolonged budget impasse.
One key point is that while the state is not funding our programs, that we operate on behalf of the state, and there are many that we operate on behalf of the state. So while they're not currently funding them, the expectation has been made very clear that we are to continue operating them. And so operational costs, same as you're largely tied up in staff, is where it should be. So we need to continue to make payroll and to pay leases and to provide instructional support, materials, and resources at our own expense. So the state has been very clear. You must move forward with operating these programs. However, you will not receive any revenue in exchange until the budget is passed and the authorization bills and the appropriation bills match, and then the money can flow from Harrisburg, which is why we are taking this extra step as early as next month, so that in the event we need to push a button to get revenue to support the programs that we're operating, we can do so. So it's really focused on the state-funded programs that we operate as opposed to the district-funded programs, which your districts, would continue to fund. Ms. Heinleberg, is there a question?
Lots.
Okay.
Since there are sessions until September, the likelihood of anything being resolved is 0, right?
Currently, yes. That would be my understanding.
What would change that?
If something were to happen, I don't know, Rebecca, if you.
If there was some sort of agreement reached and the two chambers, one or both chambers decided to come back mid-August. And there have been some conversations that might occur. Even though they are formally adjourned until the September 18th and the September 28th date, know that they can come back, the chair of either body can call them back at any time if the chair so chooses. So it's possible right now it's my understanding no discussions are occurring. It's my understanding people are just taking a break. Things were really tense and got really heightened. at the end of June and over the July 4th holiday. And so no conversations are occurring. But if conversations start to happen, and most of this happens behind closed doors, right? And if an agreement is reached, then it's possible that they could come back in mid-August. So there's speculation on that, but there's nothing certain.
So then my mind also goes to the fact that our public schools get funding, although it's not as much as I feel we should get from the state. We get money as well. With that not approved, that means that as individual school districts, we may need to
Borrow.
Yes, you're the same. We're in a slightly different position. Your statement is 100% factually correct. Yes, the school districts all receive
so
state
the
funds.
impact is different.
Right, because by and large, your revenue, and I'm generalizing, is mostly locally taxed. You're not a taxing authority as an ag board, so we don't tax. Our revenue comes from contracts for services and from agreements with the state, which is why we're being a little more proactive, and because we don't want to risk it, yeah.
Understood, but there is, depending on the school district, and some school districts are set up to be able to borrow more readily than others, so I think the impact on some of those school districts is probably gonna be a little bit more than on others.
I would imagine similar, we had this a couple years ago, Ms. Eilenberg, to your point, I know that many districts had a tax revenue anticipation note ready to go in the event that the budget impasse impacted their bottom line and their cash flow, especially as it was timed with local tax revenue collection. So your point is right on.
I guess my question, well, my question would be, you have a question?
I did. I'm confused, isn't Governor Shapiro pretty big on education? And as that candy cause we get closer to August, emergency meeting for both parties to come back?
I do believe the governor has that power, but ultimately, it's the leaders of each body that needs to bring them back. So there needs to be agreement from your President Pro Tem, Senator Ward, and an agreement from your House Speaker to come back. Only the House Speaker and the President Pro Tem can bring the chambers back. The governor can ask, and he does have that authority to ask, but that doesn't mean that the leaders will comply. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, I just want to it makes sense.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, my only question would be to Allison, so, I mean, just say I'm doing the math here on my nice new Fab Lab, holding up my thing, it's very, very nice. And if we had to borrow $1 million for 1 month at like 5%, all right? I mean, we would have to incur $5,000 or $6,000 in expense, right? So my question is, if not only the IU, but if all the local districts have to go for these tax anticipation notes, there's interest involved. And so is there any accommodation made for by the state when they overrun the budget that, or is this just something that we all have to pick up the tab for?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, yeah, and then again, so.
There's also consulting fees, right? Not only do we pay interest by the month or by the term of the loan, but we have to pay a consultant to actually facilitate this, right?
That's correct, we will be paying PFM to help us with this.
Exactly.
So there is an expense to borrowing money, just like there is if you do it personally. And so that's why I want to make sure we're bringing it to your attention and making sure you know that we intend to honor the state's request that we operate programs. That's obviously in the best interest of the kids and the adults that we serve. But just know that we will be doing it at a greater expense because of the potential that we'll have to borrow money.
Dr. Hoppen, for the newer board members, I mean, the school district will have to maintain a fund balance. To what extent does the IU maintain a fund balance?
So we do have some fund balance. We think, based upon current cash and projected revenues that we think we will receive independent of the state funding, we're good through at least October, hopefully through the end of November. But a lot of that is dependent upon some of these local revenues and when we receive them.
All right, so to Ms. Eilenberg's concern, I mean, we can envision a world where the two parties butt heads so much and don't give a darn what's happening in the sticks, so to speak. But if you recall the last budget impasse, It really was the school districts and the impact that we were facing that made these individuals move, because the school districts were talking about shut down, some school districts were. And if we've got cash on hand to go to November, don't want to speak for you, but I can't see this going past September myself. I don't know, Rebecca, if you think, it doesn't matter. I don't care what agreement they come to, there's no way it leaks into October, it's not gonna happen. It's just my personal opinion.
So I do agree with you. I mean, you've got those return dates that they've always honored when they've always honored their published session schedules. I guess one of my concerns is it's not just about the appropriation bills, it's getting the school code bills approved as well, the authorization of how to spend the money. But to Mark's point and to your point, the last time this happened, and I recall because we were doing some really aggressive advocacy, we did try to help our Bucks County legislators understand how much we were going to be paying in interest if we had to pull the trigger on the revenue anticipation note. And I know each of the school districts were also doing those calculations. And we were advocating, if we have to do this in order to keep running, can we get assurances that we'll be reimbursed for the cost of that interest, the cost of borrowing? And I know that you're exactly right, Mr. Jackson, when it became clear that school districts were not going to be able to make payroll. School districts all across the Commonwealth. That's what really motivated this up. And I believe that was Governor Wolf's first term. It was his first budget, I think. So yes, there's still a long runway.
So as individuals, we can contact our state reps and our state senators and encourage them with loud voices to move this along. Don't put us in a position to do this, it's not fair. We should all do that, I think, individually, if we have that power to do that, which we do. And if anybody needs phone numbers, I can certainly make them up.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you.
Sure, those are the information items.
Okay, we have item 13, because we talked about, we met executive session prior to our meeting. So item 14, is there any old business that anyone wants to bring up or resurrect? Or I'll take that as a no. Under new business, I just have one thing. I know if you look in your folders, everyone has a list of the committee assignments that we did. And I know Dr. Hoffman worked on that pretty diligently and trying to give everybody what they asked for, while also trying to maintain the geographic balance along the way. So if you look, again, the committee assignments are there if you have any questions or concerns. And again, most of the committee meetings happen. We try to get them prior to our meetings, and we try to keep them as concise as they can. So just want to let everybody know that's in your packet. And other than that, Dr. Hoffman, our next board meeting will be Tuesday, August 15th. Hopefully by that time we'll have a budget. And if there isn't any other business we need to conduct, I would hope to get a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, Josh, second?
Second.
Sonnenberg and Mr. Wolver. Meeting's adjourned.
We do it fine.
It's a quick one, just